inshallah. Just to give you an overview of the program and what both speakers are going to be talking about. Imam Yaseen will basically be diagnosing the problem of the topic today, which is love and dating in Islam. So he's going to be talking about how, why, in the society, why is dating not a good thing to do? How, in the culture that we live in, especially, most of you guys, y'all are in public school and most of your children are in public school. How do you deal with, what's around you? Why do you have to stay away from that? And why don't you want to get involved in that? So he's going to be sort of diagnosing that problem and talking about, the issue of sort of gender relations and things of that nature. And then Sheikh Omar Suleiman, in the second talk, will sort of be giving the solutions. How and what solutions does Islam offer, for these, problems? What kind of beautiful solution does Islam offer, in terms of marriage? Is dating, what is dating? Is it allowed? Is love allowed in Islam? All these, questions that I know I once had, and a lot of you have. Inshallah, they're going to try to answer these questions for us. So Imam Yaseen, just to give a brief introduction, he is the Imam of the Plano Masjid, the West Plano Masjid, I should say. And as I mentioned in every one of his talks, if I ever give an introduction, he has a sick British accent. So he, it's hard not to listen to him. He could be talking about anything, you still listen to him. I don't like to give, those like paragraph-long introductions about speakers, so I'm not going to do that because I know the speakers don't like him either. So that was just a brief introduction. Please give him your full attention, and inshallah we can all benefit. Jazakallah khair.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تقربوا الزنا إنه كان فاحشة وساء سبيلا صدق الله العظيم. First of all, I'm going to kindly request brothers and sisters that have their cell phones out, can you please put your cell phones away? It's kind of rude when somebody's trying to speak we see cell phones, and I'm telling you because I'm one of those people sometimes. And I know there's many brothers, I can see them leaning at the back and they've got their cell phones out, because when they're putting their heads down, it's not out of tawadhu. It's because they're busy looking at something on their phones. Updating statuses, yeah. So let's put your phones away, inshallah. Let's take something back from tonight's program. We've all come out of our homes on a Friday night to learn something. And we want to be learning something that's going to make a positive change in our lives, or something that's going to impact our thoughts, our mentality and our behavior, and our thought process and patterns of behavior that will develop later on in our lives. So we want to learn something, and we want to revitalize our iman and our thoughts. So let's inshallah try and listen attentively to today's topic, which is of great importance. I like Brother Farzan's introduction. I wish my wife knew that. He said, anything I say sounds good. She doesn't agree. So next time I'm going to record him and take it back home so she can listen to it. I've been given a topic which is of great relevance and importance. Many of you may have left your homes tonight to find out, is the Sheikh going to legitimize dating? Is he going to make it halal for us? Is he going to create a loophole? Is he one of these grand muftis? What does grand mufti mean? It means you give a grand under the table, he accepts it. Right? Is he going to legitimize it? Remember one thing, we can never legitimize something that Allah has prohibited. We can never make halal what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram. And this deen is a deen of obedience. It's a deen of acceptance. Our faith is called what? Islam. And Islam means to submit to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So first and foremost, we have to understand our identity as Muslims. We are Muslim, which means that we submit to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever Allah tells me, I'm going to do it. Whether I understand it or not. Whether it's beyond my comprehension or not. That's first and foremost. And the beautiful verse of the Quran that Hafiz Sajjad recited in Isha was speaking about this same concept of Islam. رَبَّنَا وَجْعَلْنَا مُسْلِمَيْنِ لَكَ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِنَا أُمَّةً مُسْلِمَةً لَكَ. It was very relevant because I was going to start my speech with the subject of Islam. And he spoke, and he also recited the same verses. It's a dua of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, "Oh Allah, make me and my son Ismail Muslimain, those who are obedient to you, those who submit to you." So we have to understand that this deen is a deen of acceptance, a deen of taslim and submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we are the creation and Allah is the creator. We are the servants and Allah is the master. The servants don't ask the master when he tells them to do something or he prohibits something, why do I have to do this, or why do I have to stay away from this? When the master makes a command, the servant says, Labbaik, I am ready, I accept. That's our position with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are true believers, and we have to build and develop our iman to that level where we accept any commandment that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's many verses of the Quran that speak about this importance. If we take, for example, the verse in Surah Al-Ahzab where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it is not appropriate or correct for any believing male or believing female that when Allah and His Rasul have commanded something, that he has a choice to divert from that. He can only accept it. We can't turn away from it. We can't reject it. If we reject, then we are guilty of sin. In fact, if we reject something, then it could also lead towards a graver sin of kufr. So we have to be very careful when it comes to Islamic laws, Islamic principles, and Allah Ta'ala's commandments and prohibitions. So I can make this very easy. I can just tell you right now, dating is haram, let's go home. Right? But that's not the point of today's discussion. Today we want to speak about it on a deeper level. But before I speak about this, I want you to understand something. Many of you who are still in your teens, some even younger than that, and some just past their teens, I want you to understand the gift of youth that Allah Ta'ala has given you. This gift of youth will never return once it goes. Just remember this. Right now you are young, but once this age passes, you will never recoup this gift of youth again. And it's a great gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be young and energetic and vibrant. You know, right now you're at such a stage in your lives that you have the strength to do anything. Our teacher used to say that you guys have so much energy, if I told you to break this mountain, you'd probably break it. And I remember he said that to me because we broke a window once. And I broke it. It was actually not a good incident. It was after one of the salawat and somebody came and he was trying to, you have a tug, so I pushed him and the window broke. My dad had to pay for it. I got beats for that as well. Khair. What we're speaking about is the gift of youth. You know what Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said about young people? And this is something we need to think about. Think about this. You protect yourself from distractions, from sins, from disobedience for a certain amount of years in your life, and you will be under the shade of Allah Ta'ala's throne on the Day of Judgment, when there will be no shade but the shade of Allah Ta'ala's throne. In a hadith where Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned 7 categories of people that will be under the shade of Allah Ta'ala's throne on the Day of Judgment, when people will be sweating in drowning in their own sweat, and the sun will be extremely close to their heads. This is reality, my dear respected brothers and sisters. This is something that will occur. Our iman tells us this. If you want to be saved on that day from this extreme heat, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Shabun nasha'a fi ibadatillah." A young person who was raised on the ibadah and submission and obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will be protected from this sun. So we know that there is great virtue in this age. It's one of the times in our lives that we must benefit from, because we're healthy and we're young. But at the same time, there are stuff and things that come in our way, in our direction, that we have to try and avoid. Obstacles that will come in your way. Obstacles that will come between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As believers, we live for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We live to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we live for the service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's important for us to build a strong connection and relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our hearts must be engaged with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our hearts must be connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are certain activities and behaviors that stunt the growth of one's spirituality and connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're going to explore one of those today. We're going to explore one of those today. Islam is a complete and total way of life. We understand that Allah made us Muslim, and Islam means to submit to Allah. Allah didn't just give us this religion that we practice part-time and we leave at other times, but it's a total way of life. Today, unfortunately, we've become part-time Muslims, seasonal Muslims. We become Muslims in Ramadan. We become Muslims in the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. We become Muslims on 10th of Muharram. We become Muslim in Mawlid time. Right? Some Muslims do that as well. They become Muslims for Mawlid. So we have so many different types of Muslims. We have the part-time Muslims, the seasonal Muslims. But Allah is telling us in the Quran to become full-time Muslims. Udkhulu fis silmi kaffa. O believers, enter this deen fully, which means your mind, your heart, your soul, your spirit, your limbs, your bones, your veins, everything is pumping with Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the mark of a true believer. Islam is very comprehensive. Islam has told us how to behave. Islam has guidelines for our society. Islam has guidelines for our relationships. Islam has guidelines for our families. Islam has guidelines for our masajid, our communities. Islam is so comprehensive. We just need to dive into this ocean and learn how to apply this beautiful deen in our lives. One of the ingredients of a peaceful and harmonious society that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has encouraged us to adopt, one of the traits is haya and modesty. It's a trait which is of great importance. What is haya? What is modesty? If somebody asked you, what is modesty? Is modesty a pair of clothing? Is modesty clothing that we think, somebody thinks, I'm wearing the hijab and I'm modest? Does wearing the hijab necessitate modesty? It's a symbol of modesty and it's a faridah of our deen. But does that mean as soon as somebody has worn the hijab, then that is a modest person? We have to ask ourselves these questions. Because you often hear about sisters that still wear hijab and still engage in actions and activities that they're not supposed to, Islamically. Do we not hear about it sometimes? I mean, I'm sure the girls and sisters have heard about this. You go to college, you go to high school, you may know of some sisters that wear the hijab, but they still engage in activities that they're not supposed to engage in. And that's not down to the hijab, that's down to their qalb, their heart. Their heart needs a lot of work. So haya is a barrier, it's a shield of modesty that stops and prevents a person from behaving inappropriately. It stops a person from behaving in a foul manner, in a disliked manner. Haya is a sort of shyness, shame and morality that a person develops to behave in a certain manner. That's what haya is. Sometimes in Urdu your parents say, Sharam nahi hai. You have no haya, you have no shame. This is the sharam we're speaking about, sharam, haya. And it's a trait that women should have and men should have. It's a trait that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had in abundance. Uthman radiallahu anhu is known for his haya. In fact, it says about Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam that his haya was such that he was more modest than a virgin would be on the first night of her marriage behind the veil. That's a hadith of Nabi Kareem about Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam's haya, which means that he had so much shyness that he would never indulge in an act that is inappropriate, whether he's alone, whether he's in seclusion or he's in public. And haya is of speech, to avoid profanity and obscene language, vulgar and disgusting language. Haya is also haya of one's body. And haya is to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commandments and not to disobey Him, whether one is in seclusion or one is in the public frame. That is haya. And it comes from the heart. The more God-fearing and more God-conscious somebody is, the more haya they will have. Because haya shu'batun min al-iman. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, modesty is a part of our faith, and faith springs from the heart. If a person has iman and he is conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his haya will be very evident in his actions. His haya will be very evident in his actions. So haya is a very important trait. In fact, in a hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, "Min kalamin nubuwati al-ula, idha fataka al-haya, fasna' ma shit." All the prophets encouraged their people and taught them that if you don't have haya, then you will engage in all sorts of actions. So shyness is a trait that we should all have. Modesty. It prevents us from acting inappropriately. Now that brings me on to our subject today, dating in Islam. Now when you look at it from the lens of haya, you can already see, okay, it's an immodest thing. It's immoral. It's inappropriate. How can you date somebody and be with somebody when it's an act of extreme immorality and immodesty? When there is no sacred union binding or combining you together, like nikah. So let's look at this concept of dating. The issue is sometimes we make too many excuses. Many times you will hear from Muslims. Let's not even speak about non-Muslims here. We're speaking about Muslims. We want to address Muslims right now. Many a times you will hear some excuses from Muslims. A brother will say to you, "I'm just talking to this girl, she's Muslim. Don't worry about it, she's Muslim." Okay? Or the sister will say, "Yeah, but he's a good brother. He's Muslim." Okay? Some of the excuses they make, "We're just friends." Right? We're just friends. Just friends? This is the biggest disease today. This just friends is breaking up marriages. Do you know that? This just friends, this platonic, this strictly platonic friendship. And people are debating back and forth. Is it possible to have strictly platonic friendships or not? If you're a man, you know the answer. Okay? Some things I'm going to say here tonight might be blunt, and it may ruffle a few feathers, but these are aspects that we have to discuss today. We have to talk about these very clearly and openly. Because the problems we find in the wider society are existent in our own community, but we brush them under the carpet. Our children are engaged in the same activities you will find non-Muslim kids engaged in, but we don't like to talk about it and we turn a blind eye. And I'm being very honest here, brutally honest. Maybe you don't know what your kids are getting up to. I'm being very honest here, very clear and open. Maybe you don't know what your children are getting up to. But in my position, I have many cases that are brought to me. And many people call me. And sometimes the couples themselves or the child themselves, the teenager, they will call and ask for some guidance because they're facing such a situation. So let's be very open about this subject today. We don't want to hide anything for another discussion, for another forum. Let's talk about this today. So this excuse, we are just friends. We're only friends. If you've ever watched a Bollywood movie, love starts from what? Dosti, right? Prem starts from Dosti. I don't know if you understand Urdu, I'm sorry, or Hindi. Acha, he said Acha. Prem means love, starts from what? Dosti. And they say, if he's not your best friend, how can you love him? If she's not your best friend, how can you love her? Right? This is what they teach in Indian movies, Bollywood. Okay? And I'm going to speak about the societal influences on our behaviors and on our thinking. Okay? So, we are just friends. It's an excuse, my brothers, dear brothers and sisters. Let's not fall into that trap. Number 3, our intentions are good. Well, how do you know his intention is good? Well, how do you know her intention is good? Let's not make the brothers the victims there all the time. It goes both ways. Your intention may be good, that I want to seek a pure relationship because I intend to marry this person. But what about his intention? Now, I've actually met a sister who was under this false pretense of marrying this guy, and unfortunately, Allah protect us, they engaged in actions they were not supposed to before marriage, and his dad said they can't get married. What happens to that girl now? What happens to her haya? What happens to her self-esteem? What happens to her respect and honor and dignity after she has given herself like that to somebody under this false pretense that our intentions are good, for his father to turn around and say, you guys can't get married, I don't agree, and send him off elsewhere, out of state to another school, so they can't stay in contact or be together. Let's think about this. Sisters, think about this. We trust each other. Really? Do you know what the word trust means? It's a 5-letter word, but it's a very deep word. Trust is built when you spend your days and nights with a person who has taken that promise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they will take care of you. That's when you can develop trust. You can't develop trust because you have this infatuation or this lust or this... This infatuation or this lust that you have, you like somebody because they go to the same school as you and you think they're cute, and then all of a sudden he says 1 or 2 good things to you. He says you've got pretty brown eyes, they like almond shape, they like your eyelashes, and you think all of a sudden, whoa, this boy, he's different. This guy is different. Everybody else talks about something else, and this guy talks about my eyes. And immediately you fall for him because he says 1 or 2 good things. Be careful of the players. There's a lot of men out there and women out there that have the gift of the gab. I'm telling you, I'm not joking here. You might think this is all a laugh and it's a nice giggle, and I might say it in a way that might make you guys laugh, but don't get fooled or deceived. There's a lot of guys that talk a good talk, but they can't walk the walk. I'm telling you, they might talk a good talk, and when they've got what they've wanted, you won't see them again. And then what's happened to your dignity and your honor, and your respect and your worth and your self-esteem? What's happened to it after that? We need to think about these things. All of these excuses that we hide behind, you have to remember that shaitan is always playing tricks with our mind. Your intentions start out as good, then you start talking via text message and via IM and via Facebook Messenger and this messenger and that messenger, and then slowly people start getting brave and comfortable. Then they start asking lewd and disgusting questions. I'm telling you this. People start getting brave because they're behind the screen and they're not looking at you in person, and they think, let me just ask this question, see what her response is. Let me just ask him this question, see what his response is. And then before you know it, the conversation escalates and goes to something else. So something that started out with good intentions becomes something completely different. And then before you know it, they are engaging in haram and speaking about disgusting things. things that are supposed to be kept within the parameters of marriage. See, Islam does not discourage love. Don't think that Islam is a religion that lacks love. There's no love in Islam. If you read poetry written by Muslims, you'll find a lot of loving poems written in the poetry. In fact, there's a hadith of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He said, "Al-mu'minu ma'lafun, wa la khayra fi man la yahlafu wa la yuhlafu." It's a hadith of Ahmad. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates that Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "A believer is the embodiment of love, and there is no blessing in the one who does not love or the one who is not loved." So we all have an innate nature, and it's a natural phenomenon that we want to love and we want to be loved. But what is that love asking from us? And what direction is that love leading me to? That's what we have to speak about. That's what we need to channel. That's what we need to keep reins on. If we let our emotions run wild, most of the times we can't even distinguish between lust and love. We don't even know whether it's love or it's lust. And there is a time for everything. So we have to remember all of these things. Let's go back now. Most of the times we're disillusioned when it comes to love. And when we're disillusioned when it comes to love, there is a loss of essence. There is no greatness in that sort of relationship, number one. And number two, it's infatuation. It's infatuation. It's not real love. Most of the times when we see somebody and we think, oh, that guy is cute or this girl is cute, and then we get to know them a little bit and then we think, you know, I'm falling in love with this guy, or I think I'm falling in love with this girl. Really and truly it's a deception most of the times. It's more an infatuation than anything else. Take your mind off for a few minutes or for a few days, you'd forget about that person. It's not really love. It's an infatuation. But we're not able to distinguish this. The unfortunate thing is that we want immediate results. So when we are in this feeling, we think, you know, there has to be some result out of this. You know, I need to make this happen. Something has to happen of this. And we become obsessed with this. And we become obsessed with this thought. And then guys as well, you know, guys, they think, you know, this is the girl, but she's playing hardball. You know, you get these guys that say, you know, this is girl, you know, but she's hard to get, she's playing hard to get right now, but I really want her. And then he tries to get her, and 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 when he gets her, there's nothing there anymore, because his intentions were not clean in the first place. Do you understand what I'm speaking about? Okay? So infatuation is the biggest problem here. And there's a lot of societal influences that influence our mode of thinking. Number one is music. Music is an evil that influences our way of thinking. You know, these rap, MTV, bass, I don't know what you call it, rap MTV here, MTV bass or something like that. And all this popular culture around us, all it speaks about is lewdness. All it speaks about is nudity. All it is, the message it's sending out is of zina, nothing else. There's no purity in it. There's nothing worthwhile in those messages. All it does is speak about sin and sin and sin. Movies that we watch, serials and dramas that we watch. You know, these movies that everybody's, you know, this phenomenon right now, Twilight. Okay? Where every girl wishes that they found this vampire who's 100+ years old and he's never had a relationship with anyone else and he's pure, he's just for me. This guy, he's going to whisk me away, introduce me to his family of vampires. Okay? And this infatuation and obsession that we have, you know, we dream about this, you know, where is my knight in shining armor? When is he going to come in his amama and turban and whisk me away on the buraq? We have these fantasies that we make up in our minds after watching these films, these movies. Okay? This is influencing our behavior. You know, it's the norms of society is influencing our behavior as well. You know, we go to schools and we go to college and we see everybody's doing it. Our friends are dating, our peers are dating, our colleagues are dating, everybody's doing it. So I have to do it, otherwise I'm the odd one out. Peer pressure. You know, if I don't date and I'm an 18-year-old guy and I've never been with a girl before, then people are going to think there's something wrong with me. Or if I'm a girl and I'm 16 or 17 and no boy has asked me out before, or I've never been on a date, people are going to think there's something wrong with me. Or you start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt yourself. You know, am I not beautiful enough? Am I not pretty enough? Is there something wrong with me? Do I need to do something in order to gain attraction from guys? This is all destructive. It's destructive for your psychology, for your growth, for your nurturing. It's all a problem in society. You know, some of the effects of this dating is that first of all, they're all pseudo relationships. They're all fake relationships. They're all fake. They're not real relationships. You think you're in a real relationship. You don't know what a real relationship is about. A real relationship is when you're married and there's obligations. You know when Allah said to Adam alayhi salam, you and your wife live. Allah didn't say you and your girlfriend live in this paradise. So you and your wife live. What is Allah saying here? That Adam alayhi salam is bound by responsibilities. In these pseudo relationships, these fake relationships, there's no responsibilities. It's pure fakeness. You know, a person says, I'm bound to you, I'm obligated to you, I promise you. It's all rubbish, it's all nonsense. I'm telling you, they're all fake. There's insincerity in those relationships. Most of the time, people are doing it to just have a good time, temporarily. They're superficial, they're expensive. Because you got to buy a Valentine's gift, you got to take them out on a date, you got to pay for dinner, you got to go for movies after that. Gas money, so on and so forth. It's expensive and it's time consuming. It takes you off your focus. What are you focused on as a teenager? Your focus should be my career. How do I become a better Muslim, number one? And how do I better myself in this world? When you're in a fake relationship, this distracts you completely. Completely takes you off your focus. And you hear oftentimes regarding people who are so good in their school, so good with their grades, and they met somebody and they started a relationship and their grades went bad. Their studies went bad, they lost focus, they lost drive, determination. This is a bad effect of dating. Now I'm going to go one step ahead before I finish my talk. What are the bad effects of relations before Islam, before marriage? We're speaking about dating here, dating just going out with a guy going out with a girl. What are the bad effects of a relationship? Now going the extra mile. You know, unfortunately, when two people are together, shaitan is the third. Remember that. When two people are alone in seclusion, shaitan is the third. Don't ever think that if I'm alone with a girl as a guy, or a girl think that if I'm alone with a guy, nothing's going to happen because we trust each other, we trust ourselves. Don't think shaitan's not there in that room. Remember, shaitan is trying very hard to misguide you. He's trying very hard to make you fall into sin and into temptation. And he's giving you all of these justifications in your head. You know what, this is just, if I do it this once, you know, this guy, I'm going to stay with him for the rest of my life. He's going to be my forever. You know, this notion that we are living under. And I'm telling you, it has detrimental effects. Engaging in sexual activity before marriage has detrimental effects on a person. Detrimental effects on the relationships that a person has in the future, on the emotional state of the individual, on the physical state of the individual. It has detrimental effects. If you engage in sexual activity before, and I said I'm going to mention a few things that may ruffle a few feathers, but I want you guys to listen carefully. Because this is happening in our community. Don't think it's not happening. Na'udhu billah, Allah forbid, and Allah protects us and our children, but this is happening in our communities. If you think that this is not happening, then may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open your eyes. Because I'm telling you, this is happening in our community. We have to address this. Our children are going to college and they're going to schools and we don't know what they're getting up to. Engaging in these activities before marriage is a detrimental act and it detriments a person's relationships. How? Once you have given in, sisters listen carefully, once you have given in and you've lost your self-respect and you've given in to a guy, it's going to change your relationship forever. Every time that guy meets you, he's going to expect from you. He's going to expect something from you. And you will lose self-worth. Something that you protected and something that you respected before, you will lose respect of it. Something that's supposed to be sacred, your body, your mind, your body, which is sacred. Once you give it away, you will lose respect. If you're concerned about your future, you will wait. If you're concerned about your future, you will wait. Many times, girls, when they lose their virginity, they think, this guy, I'm going to stay with him forever. But do you know, research shows that teenage girls that lose their virginity, listen to this, research shows that teenage girls that lose their virginity are likely to have up to 13 sexual partners in their lives. Did you know that? This is statistics and studies. May Allah protect us and our families from this. But girls who give up their virginity in their teens are most likely to have up to 13 sexual partners in their lives. These are studies that are shown. May Allah protect our families. And I have some more things to say. I want you guys to listen to these very carefully before I give it over to Sheikh Suleiman. Beyond the relationship with the partner that they're seeing, it will strain your relationship with your families because you will have to lie to them and hide stuff from them. So your relationship with your family will be devastated. Secondly, your relationship with your friends and your peers will be affected because your friends and peers that don't agree with this way of life will start to disassociate from you. And something else, once the word starts to spread in the society and the gossip starts, it will become unbearable. And when it's time for you to get married, it will be very difficult, whether you're a guy or a girl, to find a spouse because you will be known in the community as the person who has been engaged in haram acts before marriage. Your reputation will be bad. So these are just the detriments to our relationships. Physical. Let's look at the physical now. A person who engages in acts of sexual nature before marriage is susceptible to STDs. And girls that engage in sexual activities are prone to cervical cancer. There's two leading causes for cervical cancer. One is early sexual intercourse, and number two is multiple partners. Multiple partners. And I'm telling you, there is, and you think to yourself, well, no, because I'm only going to see one guy. It doesn't work like that. Do you know how many girls he may have been with? And do you know how many guys that girl may have been with? Think about this. A study was taken of 1,000 students at a high school, of which 600 of them said that yes, they've had a sexual partner before. And they were asked how many sexual partners their partners may have had. And in effect, one person may have had 288 partners because of that effect. You've been with one person, they've been with others, they've been with others, they've been with others. In effect, you've been with 288 people. Do you know how prone you are to catching a disease and a sickness? Because think about it. It makes complete sense from a medical perspective as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our communities from this. Emotionally, this is the last one. And then religious, of course, that's an obvious, but emotionally, girls and boys that engage in this sort of act before its due time, before marriage, are 3 times more likely to be depressed. In fact, they are screened for depression if they are engaged in such actions from an early age. And people that lose their virginity before marriage, at those early years of their life, are 6 times more likely to commit suicide. 6 times more likely to commit suicide. Sometimes you will find girls, and this is where the fathers come in, and this is something I've been speaking about many times. Girls need to have a positive male role model in their lives. A girl needs to have a positive, strong father figure in their life, otherwise they will seek it elsewhere. And that is why you find girls who have these patterns of behavior that engage in sexual activities with multiple guys because they have something missing in their life. So to keep a guy in their life, they will give in. And they will continue to give in to keep the guy for longer. And these relationships don't last. And what will happen when the guy leaves? You will start questioning yourself, was I not good looking enough? Maybe if I was more beautiful, he would have stayed longer in my life. Then it leads to all sorts of behaviors like anorexia and eating disorders, because I need to look better. I need to look more attractive and appealing. And sometimes girls that go through this phase start to physically cause themselves pain to numb the emotional pain that they're going through. To numb the emotional pain that they're going through. And what it does is stunts the growth of a woman. They don't know how to show affection. They don't know how to bond. Actually, neurologists have said that women that engage in sexual activities before marriage, it's very difficult for them to bond in their future relationships that they have. It's very difficult for them to bond. They don't know how to show affection and love unless there is some sexual implication in it. That's why we see this destruction in society. So I'm just going to end here. The religious harm is great, we know that. What does Islam teach us? Guidelines. I'm going to go through them very quickly. Lower your gazes. Number 2, never be alone in seclusion with the opposite gender. And that doesn't mean physically alone. That also means Facebook, text, chat. Because we think to ourselves, not being alone means physically not being alone. I'm never alone with a girl, I'm okay. I'm never alone with a guy, I'm okay. It also means this sort of seclusion. Nobody else is monitoring your conversation, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. That's very, very important. Lowering the gaze is also an Islamic guideline. Wearing proper hijab is very, very important as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us stability. Allah ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشًا. Don't go close to zina. That means don't go close to the avenues that could lead to zina as well. Allah didn't just say don't fornicate, Allah said don't go close to it. May Allah Ta'ala give us all the ability. Maybe I jumped from one thing to another. I hope it was beneficial and maybe I took more time. I think it was a topic that required us to think about and speak about these important things. May Allah Ta'ala give us all the ability to understand this. We're going to have Q&A inshallah after Shaykh Omar's